Joe joins in, we'll get him caught up, so. The first order of business is to approve our minutes from our March 22nd meeting. It's been a while.
Move approval.
Very good, I will second it. Assuming we're both good with it, any changes? Aye.
Well, I was thinking of a rewrite.
Not wild about this sentence, huh?
That's right.
All right, well,
All good.
okay, I'll consider the meeting minutes approved. And then our primary order of business is to review some of our policies here. And I know we've got a number of policies to go through, so, and even some issues that have been raised where we may want to institute new policies. So, as Robin mentioned, I think we'll have a series of meetings, but the first thing that I thought we should really talk about, because we've seen this a couple of times, is the exemption for specialty construction. Now, my understanding is that right now, our policy states when there is an exemption for warranty issues, that triggers the applicant to at least have an apprentice on site. Is that correct?
I think that's what the policy says,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I know we've seen a couple of them, particularly for life cycle, for specialty construction. And I think there were some questions on whether that is a warranty issue or what that is. Would that trigger the apprentice? And I think our policy isn't clear enough to address that. And I think that's something I would recommend. And Troy, maybe you can talk a little bit about that. You know, I think we saw with the bolting on the tanks.
Right. I mean, Rochester's a very talented workforce. And when we go back and we discussed another one with the floor at Life Cycle being a specialty piece of equipment that's going to apply this floor, concrete floor. Why wouldn't we want somebody local, an opportunity to train our workforce when an opportunity comes and presents itself? Back in the original discussion, it was that epoxy floor in food service. And we saw that New Jersey coming in on us on Saturdays and Sundays. So that's where the conversation started, okay, right at the basics of an epoxy floor. Now we have a concrete floor on a specialty piece of equipment. LaChase was faced with this at Amazon. LaChase was very intimidated on how in the heck they're going to get 45,000 yards or square feet, I think it was, in one day. Never did it before. Did it very, very well, to the point where Amazon's taken LaChase on the road because they've outperformed anybody else that's done this type of work.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's
That's
So
exactly what-
that's something that we should be proud of.
Absolutely, no question.
Rochester's hear it all the time, and especially in the sheet metal field. We would take an apprentice over a journey person from Rochester, New York. And that's not just sheet metal, that's all the trades. So what is it that got us to this point? Is Rochester's basic, what the skyline of Rochester was and is. So it's, for me, very difficult to get specialty and warranty separated from itself, because at the end of the day, I think what our intention was is to train our local workforce whenever there's an opportunity, right? And the original was the thought process of an apprentice. Maybe we should look into what can we do to encourage that use of an apprentice. What can we work, can we incentivize, can we put something else in there to make this where other people would like to take somebody? I'll see somebody come in and the company will pull auction. Technology's always moving. We should be staying with technology as it progresses, I just feel it's an opportunity for us to get another person here in our community, another tool in their toolbox, is what we usually reference. And just, I'm certified in this. Look, I've taken the training, I've had experience, you know, it's another feather in everybody's cap.
No,
I'd like to see more of that.
no, I agree. I think that is the spirit of really what the warranty, bringing an apprentice on for a warranty is. It is, the spirit of it is really to provide training opportunities so that eventually that work can be maintained locally, so,
Right.
yeah.
So are you suggesting that those two paragraphs in the policy should be one, warranty and specialized?
Yeah, I think that's where I'm leaning, but,
Okay.
yeah, Rhett, you had?
Yeah, so I guess my thoughts are, we have a great example to use for our community in Amazon and LaChase. That's a great example. And without scaring people away from Monroe County, why wouldn't we have some verbiage in there about specialty and warranty issues that we're more than capable of taking care of? I don't know if we need to change the timeline or something like that, but I'm in full agreement. I think that as these projects come to us, I think they're looking to save whatever money that they can save, and they're used to doing that, and I think that we just need to continue to get better. And as the companies are pushing for one thing for these projects, I think that we should be able to step up, because at the end of the day, and I'm gonna say this just about every meeting, our local workforce is no different than bringing jobs on for these projects. These are our local, these are people that we're supposed to support. And I think that if we have a clearer statement for the projects to let them know, you know, here in Rochester, we're gifted. We have what it takes.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It's hard not to look at the workforce development opportunity that is presented by this and say, let us take advantage of it. One question I had for you, Troy, is let's take an example. We can use any example. The idea was to bring an apprentice on, but I would think the ultimate goal is to have it so that skill set resides here. Is that an apprentice, or is that a skilled sheet metal worker that we want to have gained experience in this particular field? I mean, because an apprentice, to me, I look and say that's still someone who's coming up through the ranks. That may not necessarily develop what we ultimately want, which is to have that skill set reside here, so that if somebody came in the future for that particular specialty or warranty or product, that we could say, yes, we have, you know, Jane Doe, who's done that before, who is certified. Thoughts on that? I mean, should we be limiting it to an apprentice, or should we be saying we should have someone here who is, you know, going to get trained in that? And that, from my standpoint, that may or may not be an apprentice.
So we originally, let's go back to the epoxy floor.
Mm-hmm.
Can an apprentice help, to Rhett's point, save money? We call them fetch-its. Go get me this, go get me that, clean this, clean that, get me ready to go. I'm coming into this room, or whatever
Right.
it is. I think it's a different situation than the bolted up tanks, right? We don't want somebody to get hurt and bolted up around a crane, obviously. So it would be an advanced apprentice. It wouldn't be somebody coming out as a first-year apprentice or a second-year apprentice. Obviously, no trade's gonna want to put somebody on that's going to get hurt, that hasn't had the, you know, that's number one, right? So I think each project's gonna be specific to what level apprentice you're gonna need.
But let's come back to the epoxy floor, right?
Mhm.
You don't want someone fetching stuff. You want someone learning the skill to put that epoxy floor down.
Which is first the order. What do I gotta do? So
Right.
on an epoxy floor, the first thing they're gonna do is sand the floor, clean the floor, etch the floor, prime the floor, and then mix the epoxy. So even an apprentice being in that order of operation, I consider that training. So that person's not gonna just say to their family member or friends, hey, I can epoxy floor your garage, and just go in and put epoxy down and say, here, give me my money, and off I go. He's gonna be able to say to somebody, this is how we do it, and this is how it needs to be done. Whether they were physically holding and doing the work, I think just observing the work as an apprentice has value to it. In this epoxy floor situation, Tyvek suit, gloves, respirator.
So let me just carry that. So we do that with an apprentice. So that was for company A.
Right.
Now, company B comes in and says, we want to put an epoxy floor. Is the trades at that point able to say, we have people who've done this before? Is that a statement that can be made so that now that company doesn't have to bring outside people in? Or would we have been better off having a skilled person saying, yeah, they actually did the work, and we can point to someone who says, yeah, not only we had an apprentice, but we had a skilled
Qualified.
person who's actually done this now. Because that's really what our goal is when another company comes in.
We're ready.
We're certified.
Yeah,
We're-
whatever trade it is.
So to this epoxy floor, if you remember, the reason that company out of New Jersey said it was under warranty, they were lined up with a specific product. Locally, we had just as an equivalent product, same ANSI standards, same everything, then mirrored. And Pierpont was the local contractor that would do that type of work. Because they didn't have the certification to handle this specific product, and now we've learned, what was the name of that, Diggy Floor or something, I can't remember the name of the floor company. He had a monopoly on this product, which now blocked out everybody. And that's what you're gonna see is it's the Boulder Tanks, the same thing. They have, that's their product, they manufactured it, they're gonna ship it, they wanna install it, they wanna have the warranty. But at the same time, they should respect our local labor policy and say, yeah, I could put on a local person here. It's the struggle of, I really, to the point, we're offering an opportunity for an apprentice. Now, let's talk about the waiver.
So my question is, should we, as we're developing policy, should we limit it to an apprentice, or should we also open it up and say it could be a skilled individual, should the situation,
It may need to be both,
yes,
or it could be both.
yeah, so that,
So how do you, back to Rhett's point, how do we encourage out-of-state contractors to utilize this, right? This is not a punishment to them at all. This was a mechanism
no,
to
this is
save
an
money
opportunity
and
for us to.
do two things, right? Show a cost savings and train our folks.
Right,
The other one that we can talk about is that they were making those meals that were vacuum-packed meals for the Gander Mountain, the outdoors people.
OFD foods.
Yeah.
Was it?
Oregon
they had-
freeze dry,
Oregon,
OFD, yeah.
Oregon. There's another perfect example of the warranty on a loading dock. We had Otis, and everybody here could have done all this. It was just that we needed to start, when I started seeing all these waivers piling on, it was just like, oh my goodness, we got
But the
people
thing
here
is,
that could do this.
you know,
Is it limited to person or contractors?
well, see, and we're not gonna know that, and.
Right.
And that's not unusual within construction is, you know, windows, right? You got Pella windows, you got Anderson windows, you know, Anderson has their certified installers, Pella has their, it's not that Anderson window installer couldn't do Pella, but that's the nature of just that marketplace, right? Me as a manufacturer, I want someone coming in, doing my training, and to a certain degree, it does limit. And we're not gonna prevent that.
That's gonna
Right,
continue.
that's gonna exist
Right.
regardless. What I'm trying to look at is, okay, you know, just using my analogy there, if we have people who've trained in Anderson and all of a sudden someone's bringing in Pella, you know, it's up to the contractors or the unions to say, hey, we're gonna get our folks, you know, certified to do Pella windows as well. So, as it comes to policy, should we be limiting that to an apprentice, or should we also at least give ourselves the flexibility to put a skilled person on there so that the unions or the trades can say, yes, we've got a certified Pella
Person.
window installer? That, to me, I think is a greater advantage, so that if these things ever come back again, the trades can come in and say, we do have people that are certified.
So
Do you
my-
agree,
so-
or am I
Oh,
off?
So the struggle was when we started to work through this process, I questioned, you know, what certificates are required for this task, right? What specific certificates are you looking for? And that's where the 45 days is huge. We can go in, I can make one phone call, and I'll have Strike Force training in my union hall, training specific to any product, any mechanical device. We will just have it done in those 45 days. And my struggle was, what is the certificate? And I can't remember what project it was, but it was like, what
It was the
specific?
bolting.
What is the specific certificate that we need here that qualifies this as a warranty?
And it could be that you are certified by the manufacturer, right?
Right.
Which, at that point, then, the folks in the union all have to go get that certification.
Right.
And at least, the way I see it is, we should provide them the opportunity to do that. If they choose not to, once again, because they're too busy or whatever, their call.
Can you do that within the 45 days?
Well, what I'm hearing is that we can.
In most cases, it can
Yeah.
happen, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we also have to be, and I have to be careful with the language too, because what could possibly happen is we get an out-of-state contractor come in, we give them an apprentice, and this apprentice bangs it out of the park. Then that contractor pulls this person out of our community, right?
Whoops.
And, well, that'll happen.
That's a little
That,
bit.
absolutely. You know, because they'll look and they'll say, geez, you know, Local 46 is paying you $25 an hour. Come on over to me, I'll get you 36, you know, that kind of conversation. So this is a risk for us here.
But those
to
are
put
good
that-
problems.
But those are.
That's a nice
but-
problem to have.
But
Those
it
are
is
good
a risk.
problems.
It is a risk, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts.
Going back to, I think, the comment you made about having skilled people that have done a certain job, we're talking about the epoxy floor, that have done it before. What about a job that has a skill that we don't have any? I mean, it's not just the things that we're skilled in locally, but that we have the ability, if we don't have the skill, we have the ability to train. And I think that it may not be policy, but maybe something should be, you know, I mean, I know that the application process is lengthy, but maybe something should be touted about our local labor community and what they've done in the past. You could use LaChase with the Amazon project, and to talk about, you know, toot our horns, that we're better than everybody. We can do that here.
yeah.
Yeah, but when you bring out of state, Brett, you gotta remember that the cost of doing business in construction here is, and that was my point on the conversation last week. How did we get a local contractor 60% higher than an out-of-state contractor? And one of those is the wages and the benefits, and then
Workman's comp.
then workers' comp, workers' disability. There's a lot of moving
And we'll get
parts
to
into
those.
that, you know, so.
So here's, I'll throw this out for consideration, is right now we have, our policy reads that you have to put an apprentice up. Could we do things on a sliding scale? So if, I'll throw these numbers out there. Less than $50,000, right? There's one person, an apprentice or a skilled. If it's between 50 and 250, you put two, right? whether it be 2 apprentices or a skilled person and an apprentice, and then above 250, you get 3.
So run a ratio with the value.
Thoughts on that?
Can I ask a logistical question on behalf of staff? How might we monitor this policy? You know, working with Loki Brill and our partners, how do we ensure compliance if we were to tack on those additional apprenticeship requirements?
There would be a name, and there would just be a,
We could have the unions actually report it back.
or, yeah, because they would have to, there would be a relationship with a one-line agreement. Annalise is now going to be working on this project specific to this one and only project. Then I would just say, Anna, how many hours you worked last week? And you would say, man, I worked 60 hours last week. I would then just keep an eye on that to the end of the month when that contractor would remit back to us on your behalf for your health and welfare funds. Yeah, that would be something that would, that's an automatic, but to have us report back to Comida, that wouldn't, our people wouldn't struggle with that. But for Kevin, it would be, that I think we should take what we learned at Amazon, to help expedite Kevin's visits, is what can we do to, if it's confirmed and Kevin's already met Anna and Ann and Jay and then met you on this job, he should be able to give you something that identifies you to belong on that job. Now, we learned that at Amazon, that badging works. What can we do to help Loki Brill expedite their visits would be our focus, and putting an apprentice or local folk on a warranty or specialty. Once it's confirmed they're on site and Kevin sees you repetitively in his visits, that would be another form of, the unions or the entities working with Loki Brill confirming everything. It would be like a triple way to monitor it. I don't think that would be too difficult to accomplish.
I would want to simplify it, like create a process that is standardized across every project so that we know what we're doing as staff, and then also so that there are no surprises to the businesses, the developers. Companies like Li-Cycle or working with site selectors, they tend to, they're complaining about Rochester as a place it's more difficult to do business here versus other markets. And we're hearing about that from, the site selector ecosystem. And I would want to make this process as plug and play as possible, which is great that we have broad communication. There's a wide network of communication across the local labor community. But so from the company's standpoint, we would want, so if they come to us seeking a waiver for a warranty or for specialty construction and there's an apprenticeship requirement, we're going to want to refer them to a resource to bring on an apprentice. So we need to know who's going to be that point of contact for where is the talent pipeline for the apprentices, which would be the union halls, correct? Depending on the body of work that we're talking about. And then in terms of monitoring, we would want to firm that up with Loki Brill, right? I'm thinking out loud, I'm talking through, just wanting to make sure that it's simple, standard, feasible for all parties involved, and that, site selectors don't get frightened and scared off and want to go to Onondaga County.
I think the idea is just to be transparent, so if we did that, right, why would Loki Brill even, they would go through and check all of the folks, right? So there's a warranty issue. They know there's an out-of-town contractor there, right? So the only thing, they don't have to check the workers for that particular situation. All we need to do is say, if we're gonna do this sliding scale, right? They would come here, or, Brian would tell them, okay, you're getting this warranty issue. It's $1 million, you gotta put 3 people on there. I think the union halls can tell us whether 3 people were on there or not. So that wouldn't be any other work from as I see it from Kevin's standpoint, and it would just be a matter of them providing the information to Robin. You checking out, hey, were there 3 people on that? Am I, do I have this right, or am I oversimplifying it?
No, I think no, I'm gonna start right at the beginning. There is nothing that any contractor in construction can tell me that we don't have a qualified person and its specialty and its warranty. There is not one thing that could possibly be done that we don't have somebody here that can do it.
That's fantastic.
There you
The only other the only thing is, are you certified by that manufacturer?
Right, and is
Right.
that person that's certified available for the
Right.
specific project?
And how do we find
right?
that person? Like, to Anna's point, like, we've got the requirement in our policy, but the mechanics of it and how, you know, when it's out there and site selectors start to hear, well, Monroe County has this requirement, they don't know how to implement it, and it's, you know, it's an expense, and we don't know who to send you to. Don't look at Monroe County, go look somewhere else where you don't have to deal with that problem. So how do we make sure that, okay, we get a warranty or a specialty, assuming we attach the apprenticeship requirement on it, who's our next call? Or who's Brian's next call? How do we figure out which trade and specialty it is? Where do we get the person? And then once we have that person, then are we contacting the hall? Is Kevin it really is the minutia and the weeds that
It's a
we
great
need
question.
to figure out.
But at
So-
the end of the day, it's 45 days is 45 days. At least we got the opportunity to do this. So the first thing that Brian would do would call me. I would know exactly what trade we're talking about. I'd pick up the phone and we would go to 1 or 2 trades. We wouldn't be getting all 15 trades involved. If it's painting, we're gonna call the painter hall. If it's concrete, we're gonna call the concrete hall. We can ask that question, are you certified? Can you get certified in 45 days? Is it gonna be an apprentice? Is it gonna be a mechanic? What's the scope of the work? At the end of the day, we can't satisfy it in the 45 days. We still have it in policy, 45 days. You guys were given the opportunity, you know, your time's up, right? So I don't know if we're overthinking the process of how to implement this.
We may or may not, but I'm glad we're talking about it.
Right.
Because if it is very simple, then
Yeah.
we'll memorialize that. The only thing that I would say on a warranty issue is if somebody comes in and says, I'll go back to the window analogy, we're putting in Pella windows, you have Anderson certified installers, but not Pella. The clock starts. I think we as a community should be able to get back to them within, 15 days or so, to say we can do it or we can't, because
Right.
it's not fair to
Right.
get all the way to the 45
end.
Right.
and
I
say,
agree.
and say we
Sorry,
can't.
I agree, right?
So I think if it's a warranty issue that requires our folks to go get certified, we should be able to get back to them within 15 days on whether we're able to achieve that or not.
Yeah,
Fair?
right, absolutely.
You know, Jay, going back to Anna's point, we do want to be transparent and make it easy for projects to come to mind. We don't want to scare people away.
Right.
And I'm thinking that, again, is there something that we need to do before the process starts to let them know some of this stuff? This is what we have available to you. I mean, I don't know if it would be in the application process or they go by the 45 days. But I think that instead of them coming up with hurdles after they've chosen to do business here, and then all of a sudden, they didn't read the fine print, or they missed something, and all of a sudden, well, geez, that's not what we understood. You know, I think as long as it's clear, we do want to be transparent, and we want their business.
2 elements, I agree absolutely on the clarity. So there can't be surprises like, oh, by the way, let me bring this up. But I think some of this discussion is less about the clarity, it's more about execution. Like, the way I understand it, and Anna, your question is, okay, if all of a sudden we're going to tell them, okay, this is a warranty or this is a specialty construction, given the cost of it, it requires participation by 3 people locally, right? They're gonna wanna be able to say, okay, who are those 3 people? and those three people should show up, and it should be fluid, it should be seamless to them, is that?
Yes, we
that-
wanna make it as easy as possible. I wanna
Because-
give them a package of information, say, you call this guy, or we
Right.
call this guy,
Right.
and that's how we gin up the three
Right, so the site
individuals.
selectors
Yeah.
are saying, well, Monroe County has this requirement, but
But
don't
they're-
worry, it's
It's a
totally
well-oiled
streamlined.
machine.
Yeah,
It's a
Yes.
well-oiled machine.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing there is, so let's just go back to, let's separate these out. The warranty issue, the warranty issue comes up. The call goes to you, Troy, and you would reach out to whatever union halls need to and say, you guys gotta get, are you guys on board with getting certified as Pella installers? You need to let me know within 15 days, right, like by this date. And then it's a thumbs up, thumbs down, right? They decided to do it, and they're gonna bid on the job, right? Or, no, we've gotta, we just don't have the bandwidth, right? At which point, if they don't have the bandwidth, now it triggers the apprentice language, right? So, at that point, whether it's specialty construction or it's apprentice, once again, Troy, it's you basically saying, okay, we have two people, we have one person, who are those folks going to be? You're going to identify those folks to the GC or the specialty contractor?
I would defer to the business manager to let that specific trade handle, because I would have no business in giving out personal that would be up to that entity. I wouldn't cross.
But you would be
Yeah,
the
I would at
football
least,
analogy,
I would at least
you'd be the
get,
quarterback.
All
so
right,
you-
so let me
Yeah.
ask you a question. Troy's not gonna be here forever. And because I'm so new to the board, there's always somebody from the trades that are on this, there's usually one person, is that the case? So the bottom line is, should it come to somebody like Troy, or should it be to, the trades themselves, a contact? I'm just wondering, because this position
Yeah.
changes periodically. Would we want it to come to this board first? Because
I think
because at least what I've experienced, whether we like it or not, I sense that Troy's heart is in the right place. And so, because I'm a big picture person, are we gonna have somebody else from the trades that are gonna work as hard, spend as much of their time that doesn't pay anything, just to make sure things get done right?
So I would throw this out there, it's a great question, that whether it be the board member who is representing the trades, or it's a designee that the trades have, but there's gotta be a single point. Now, in this particular case, they're one and the same, right? But if it was someone else, the trades have to at least commit that there's going to be someone who's going to be that point of contact for
which I think Brian and Anna have already started with the president of the trades.
Grant Malone,
That
yeah.
relationship would probably trump having to put a board member on the hook for that.
That's fine.
That
And you
would-
could still
that-
have the same issue there, but at least it's a little bit more fluid to go there than,
Right, I'd rather be a resource than the point. Troy, what's going on with that job? What exactly, what is the job with being a code and all
Yeah.
that,
right, the trades could come to a sitting board member to ask.
Okay.
I'm just gonna, not that and this could be a dumb question, because I don't know. Is there a scenario in which the skill would reside in a non-union labor?
Good. Yeah,
And in
absolutely.
that instance, does the president of the trades, is that still the appropriate person to say, oh, this isn't a union,
Right.
you would need to go to,
No,
I don't
we
know.
we do this, so when I go back and we have a waiver situation, or, in this life cycle situation, bid opportunity, we'll go back to the trades. If they don't have somebody in their house, they would reference, Villager, they would reference DDS, they would say, oh yeah, well, they would be the second one, because at the end of the day, the building trades all they want to see out of this board is it stay local. We don't discriminate against that. We use us as the first resource would be the the perfect storm,
Right.
But
right?
they represent everybody's local.
But in certain
union or
situations,
non-
what'll happen back to a specific project, you and Villager has done this, DDS has done this, they sign on a project specific that they are going to, if they can't man it, they would use us as a resource. If have a relationship with one of the certain union halls, that contractor would sign on for this specific project. That happens all the time. That happens all the time when I go back to the laborer, if I go back to a carpenter, they'll throw me their top three, and then they'll mention, the non-union, and I give that to Brian. Brian has that. So I'd have to go back into the history of our relationship with Brian, but I don't just share him when we talk about local labor. I don't just give him the union contractors.
No.
I give him the whole who's here and who can do the work.
Does that, good question, Rachel, is that,
Yes, that's helpful.
okay,
Thank you.
so,
Just to clarify, just because I get asked the question, so the union is paying the apprentice
mm,
and then making sure they're in, so what if that person gets hurt?
That would be, that apprentice would be an employee of that employer,
The contractor.
the contractor,
their contractor
Okay.
that's doing the job. That,
So-
the only thing that the union would have would be a contract for that member to work for that entity.
So the union
So the-
negotiates the contract.
So
between
there
the-
would be, there, let's go back to cost savings. You want an electrician's $70 an hour. An apprentice electrician's $26 an hour. Can a first-year apprentice or a third-year apprentice satisfy your needs? That would be the conversation that the applicant or the employer would have with the union hall. What exactly are you looking for? What can we do to help you? Because I do this every day. I'm not gonna send Jay over that is a master at welding to go work for a contractor to sit and do CAD all day. Right? I'm gonna fulfill that spot with a skill set. And we would work alongside with somebody. And obviously, it's a little difficult when we're talking about elevators and lift gates on a loading dock could possibly be different than an epoxy floor. Right? And I wouldn't step on anybody else. I would ask their professional in that specific area of the trade to get involved.
so to that point, when we're in a situation where there's a skill set that we're trying to gather here, that would be, a decision on the union to say, we want to put a skilled person there, and the other thing that you need, we can handle with an apprentice.
So I think we're getting so far into the weeds here, let's stop and back the whole thing up. Let's just stop and back it up. Instead of making it a requirement, could we look at policy to increase an incentive if they use somebody local? To not discourage people,
But
to
to sweeten the pot,
encourage,
yeah.
encourage.
You get a better deal if you,
And that's sharing up front before they decide that
It's a
they
great
know that
idea.
there's an incentive. I love that.
Especially when we got workforce development, Kitty, starting to grow the way it's growing, why wouldn't we sweeten the pot instead of making this,
So,
because your comments got me locked into Li-Cycle, and I'm really frustrated to hear that Li-Cycle is putting it, if they are in fact the one putting it on the street, that we're hard to work with, when Li-Cycle was really pigeonholed on their opportunities of where they could put this plant. And Kodak, as we heard in that one presentation, was one of 3 sites in the country. Okay, so now we have your painting all ready to go. Now, you can go and start putting your picture to it, but we had that already in place where their cost savings for Li-Cycle to even go and start a project, they were already halfway to the finish line because infrastructure on a chemical plant was already there.
And I should clarify too, those comments didn't come from Li-Cycle, it was,
Just the basic
there was
contract.
some information circulating at a site selector guild meeting about the speed at which the project was taking flight, and it came to me through GRE,
So let's change it off
yeah.
and say, let's take this whole thought process down to say, yeah, you wanna pull warranty all day long. But if you wanna pull warranty and get somebody skilled as an apprentice or maybe a full journey person trained to do what you ask, let's sweeten the pot. Let's increase your incentive.
Increase what?
I'm sorry,
Increase what?
the incentive. To-
How do you define the incentive?
Well,
What are
that's
you
something
talking
that
about?
I'm gonna let all the magic people above my pay grade handle.
That's on you, Robin.
Right,
Well, it could go back to Jay's point, 50,000, 250,000, $1 million, $5 million, 200 million.
I really like the idea.
Yeah, I love it.
I think it's a very good idea.
That's wonderful.
And we start with, I would recommend we start with our current policy, which is the floor of one apprentice. But if you want to put additional, here's an additional incentive you can get.
So you could put something in policy that would say, ABC contractor wants to offer Rachel $20 an hour to come over and install an epoxy floor. I would go back in the painter and we'd say, well, that apprentice's total package is $26 an hour. We're happy that you're willing to pay $20 an hour. Would the IDA board be willing to say, we'll absorb that other $6 an hour for benefits? Then you would have a clearer.
I think logistically, that would get very,
That would
So
be
very
my-
cumbersome, but.
My reaction on changing the incentive is this. Sometimes projects come in and they're ready to go right away and they close right away after approval and they get their benefits and they get their sales tax and all the benefits are in place and then construction's going on once they've closed. So their incentive package is, it's done.
Done.
It's locked in.
And then we're going forward. Now, look, we can do anything, right? Almost anything. It would just be, do we get some kind of apprentice participation upfront from companies that aren't tied to a particular happening in the construction? So it's not tied to specialty, it's not tied to warranty, it's a project coming in and saying, regardless of what happens in our construction, regardless of we need waivers, we'll commit to an apprentice program of some kind, and the incentives out of the gate would be different because of that, rather than tying it to the local labor policy.
Could you not hold back on the incentive in that situation until they say, okay, I was able to use an apprentice, I was fortunate to put him to work for 1,000 hours, and then come up with some mathematical equation, back to Jay's point, on how large the project was. Maybe it's 2%, 5%. This is where, we can be creative here, but I think we have an opportunity to encourage with this.
If we were an
locally.
organization that had the ability to give cash incentive or rebate or a interest rate subsidy, then a look back at the project would work.
Yeah,
or
but you're
not.
not doing it.
So our incentives come in the future. They come when you don't pay the sales tax, they come when you go to record your mortgage and you don't pay the mortgage tax, or in 5 years when you're receiving an abatement. So that's why I'm trying, and we can figure it out. You know, I don't want to go into this
Well,
rabbit hole
yeah,
and say we can't do it.
But one way to do it is say, here's the incentives, right? Assuming you have an apprentice or.
Yeah, if you
more
commit
lucky
to us
level.
up front.
Right, right, and then you get this, if you don't.
Your pilot schedule will look this way.
Right.
If you commit, if you don't commit to the apprenticeship
Right.
program,
That would be the way to do it.
your pilot will revert back to the standard abatement schedule. So I could see it working that way, but again, it would be an apprenticeship requirement that they commit to at the start of their project, at the start of construction, not connected to whether they need a waiver on warranty or specialty.
And I think,
Well,
I
well,
think
we
this,
could, yeah, I mean,
I think this kind of goes back to discussions we've had in the past about, they knew exactly who they were gonna bring in from XYZ company or from a different state. They knew it up front, but because we only require a certain amount of time for them to let us know that there's a specialty that needs to be taken care of, I think that this would make things simpler down the road for this board, as well as the projects and the companies that want to do business here, because it's all up front. There's, I mean, Troy talked about life cycle again. I mean, if it was incentivized in some way up front, I think it would be a win-win
yeah.
for everybody.
And one way we could also take a look, I mean, if we're gonna, since this door's been opened, is that a way to create a market for some of the MAP graduates? Where, they have a place to go, and, that might be a transition, but something to think about.
And I think this ties in so nicely, somebody said it before, to workforce development. This is all part of workforce development. We're trying to make it simple for everybody, especially the youngsters that.
Right, we wanna make it more attractive for youth to pursue careers in the skilled trades. And that's a focus of this board and all of our partner organizations. I have a question for Rachel. So would any such change, like what we're talking about, to the apprenticeship requirement, if it's tied to incentives, would that require a change to our UTAP? And
Yes.
so we would have to come back together with the taxing jurisdictions and get a new
Yes,
agreement in
so
place?
let's say we went the route of, we're going to have a richer incentive package for companies that participate in our apprenticeship program, whatever that looks like. It would be a new incentive package that would go into our UTAP. And we've been talking about changes to our UTAP anyway, around job creation and some other things that we want to clean up. And we would have a public hearing, notify all the taxing jurisdictions that we're going to change our UTAP. And that would certainly be something we would need to include, yeah.
Do we have to hire additional personnel to work on staff to manage all of this? These sort of exceptions or added incentives and
Honestly, I
beefed up
think
reporting requirements or?
From my estimation, I think staff is having a more difficult time now trying to
Because we're cleaning
administer.
up.
So if it was something that was, I think that it would make life simpler for staff if we
More hands on deck.
kind of.
Well, just clarity, because
Yes.
it's not the one-off,
Yes.
it's not the confusion.
Right.
Here's
It's-
what it
and
is.
it's not a
You're-
reactive
You're on path A, you're on path B.
Exactly.
Right, it's not a react, so
Yeah.
where we have, I think,
That's a
problems as
problem.
an organization and staff
Yes.
is when we're reacting to a problem.
We're playing
Right.
defense instead of being
Right.
on the.
Whereas if we go into it, like, okay, this is the situation with this project from the beginning, and we're not reactive, we're setting policy ahead of time, that works out better.
Good idea.
So do we want to
A lot of work.
draft
to
that
be
up
done.
and see what
A
that
lot
looks
of
like?
work to be done
Yeah.
So,
there. There is.
as a next
It's a big
step,
nut to crack, so it's gonna take some man hours, but I think we have.
I think it's a win-win-win all the way around, for
I agree.
staff, for workforce development, for local labor.
So, I'm coming in at the tail end, and I think it's important that we clearly state what the problem is. For people who are outsiders who don't know what's going on, state what the problem is, and then how do you measure the success of what you're doing?
Well, right now,
And then-
we're losing.
Yeah.
Right now, we're losing.
So what's the problem? Articulate that in 30 seconds.
Well, the problem is we're finding businesses fighting under this word of specialty or warranty to not use our local labor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but this would resolve that.
It would
it would take a step in
to-
that direction.
Yeah, it
So-
would,
Yeah.
So that's the first part. Then the second part, how do you measure the success of that? You're talking about workforce development, you're talking about reaching people that haven't been reached before, what steps, and we can change every bylaw or every governance out there. But we can't have measurable ways of establishing these metrics of how this has changed things. We're spinning our wheels for another way in which nothing against engineering companies or contractors or anything like that. They look at ways in which they want to beat what you're doing. So I'm just playing the advocate here.
Well, so the next thing that would,
That part, I think, here is actually quite simple.
yeah, it's
Is-
the certificate.
Yeah, it's certification, it's the number of local labor hours that are put on the project. So I think the measurable component is actually the simplest part of this.
So,
And-
so, Jay, to connect the dots, I was here the last meeting, we had the union talking about reaching out to different parts of the community.
Well, that's a
That-
different.
I know, but
Yeah.
no, this all ties
No, no,
together, it all
yeah,
ties together.
But.
I know, but let me finish.
Yeah,
So we're talking about that. So how does that, what you're doing here, how do they connect? And we have to make sure we connect all those dots.
well, so the idea here is that we want to increase local participation,
Okay?
right? Full stop.
Right.
So we're able to do that, we're able to measure that. So that'll be the first. If we want to then tweak it and say, with the MAP program, that was a suggestion, when they come out of their training, or as part of their training, they participate in this because we feel like that advances their cause to become, more skilled, then we can take a look at that. That would be a further build upon this. But if we did not do that, we would still accomplish what we want, which is increasing local participation. So the question is then, can you go even further and create a market for these MAP graduates? It's an open-ended question, but not one we need to answer right now. I think we can talk about that later on. But if we can get an apprentice and create incentives to put journeymen, to put skilled people locally on it, that to me is a win-win.
Make it easier for staff.
And we can continue to build on that for other programs that come down the road, should we find a good fit. So
Is there a motion here?
I don't think we're ready for a motion.
Please, we're not ready.
All those in favor?
But if we could clearly define the action items for
Yeah,
staff,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So-
that would be helpful.
So Rachel, I think the first thing we need to take a look at is what are potential incentives we can provide applicants to increase their use of local labor on warranty and specialty construction. So that's the first thing. Second thing, and I don't want to lose sight of this, I think we should put specialty construction and warranty as one. They should not be separate anymore. Getting head nods on
Is
that?
that because, I guess I want to understand that a little bit better, like having them as one, is it because we're trying to achieve a certain end, or is the
Workforce development.
evaluation? Okay, so we can attach those requirements to both. I think for Brian's purposes, it's a separate analysis that happens for
He
warranty
can,
and specialty.
but whether it's warranty or specialty construction, the road forward is the same.
Okay,
Yeah.
the end
That's-
is wanting
you-
local training
Right.
on those, okay.
Yeah, and a workforce opportunity. Is that fair?
Yeah.
That's,
With regard to apprenticeships and
Right.
workforce
Right.
development, yes.
right. So, and then the other thing is, we want to provide an opportunity for our local labor community to get certified on manufacturers' products. And we are gonna put a time limit, and I heard 15 days on that, from when notified, so we don't hold up projects.
So 45 days to the applicant putting,
yeah.
and then if it's specific to specialty or warranty,
Warranty.
15 days to get a response, to get the ball earlier.
I think
But-
it's specific to warranty.
But as far as any other,
It's okay.
there's many other waivers that fall under, any qualified, 25%.
Yeah.
No lack of, you're gonna divide that, so the 45 days would still be for the other categories in policy right now?
Yeah, they have to notify us
It's
45 days.
for
in
15
advance.
days is specific to warranty and specialty.
Right, that, we've got to.
But with 45 days with a 15 days with a 45-day maximum. 15 days to respond, I could get this to happen, I'm committed to it, yes.
Yes.
And then 45 days, the gentleman or lady that we had lined up to come is deathly sick, won't be able to go to the job. That could happen too, right?
That
So
could
then you're-
happen,
then-
but
then
the
it- then
idea
it
is
just
that-
goes away.
Yeah, then the idea is that local labor would respond, yes, we are committed to getting
Right.
certified,
Yeah,
and, based on the schedule.
Right.
That's out there.
yeah, they should be able to answer that fairly quick.
Right, right. Okay. So, those are the follow-up items that I have. Before we,
We're out of time.
well, no, but I want to capture two things, Robin, for the, for our parking lot here. And I think we still have them, the issue with the out-of-town workers utilizing company-owned housing.
Oh, yeah.
And then ensuring that the contractors are properly, are following New York laws, specifically workman's comp, that, I just want to make sure we get those on the parking lot.
Yep,
As items we need to.
we're
address.
keeping a running list of items to discuss.
And-
Well, and I was gonna bring this up today, sorry, Anna, but I was gonna bring this up today, but something to think about, with the situation with the Gannett Building and having almost a near-death experience, and the response back last week I heard was, we're going to increase the activity with Kevin visiting the site. I think we should really consider, no, let's get back to find out who has been at that site, and are they in compliance? So we do our own investigation, because the biggest fear I have as a board member is somebody getting hurt on a construction site. You've heard me preach safety, 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 but if there's OSHA investigation on one of our projects and we have concerns, we shouldn't just say we're gonna pick up the site visits and increase our site visits. I think we too should do our own investigation, and whether it's Kevin taking the forefront or the trade affected. I was very concerned Thursday when I got off the phone about how we're gonna move forward in situations like this. I wanna protect the board.
We wanna
You had,
protect people.
yeah.
We don't,
You-
so let's put that on, because I think.
just something for our future,
Yep.
not to our,
Yep,
but,
not for a response right now, but.
yeah, right, just,
And I wanted to mention too that Unicon is going to be providing us with a summary of kind of their wish list for our local labor policy. I had some correspondence with Joe Morelli Jr., so he's gonna be sending a memo addressed to myself and to Ann, and we can come back together and talk about some of those. And workman's comp is going to be on that list.
yeah, and to your
So-
point about union, non-union, that was the Unicon and the Builders Exchange catalog that has all of our contractors in town, and it lists what they do, and it breaks it right down. That's another resource that Brian already uses. So it wouldn't be specific to the president of the trades. It would go to, as it does right now, Brian does call Unicon, does call Kim Gaylord at Builders Exchange, and, he utilizes all of his resources. He does very good at that, but we need to finish.
And can I have a motion to adjourn?
I think we ought to adjourn.